Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore a genuinely unsettling phenomenon, one that creeps me out and gets under my skin more than most others: glitches in the Matrix. There's something about unexplained events that don't make sense with reality that really bothers me. Are common things like deja vu a sign that we live in a simulation? How about strange coincidences, the Mandela effect, time gaps, repeating patterns, and more? Is everything we can see and sense all there is? Or is there something more out there? Something beyond our comprehension and understanding? In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to hear a handful of glitch in the Matrix stories, and along the way, consider these questions. What the hell is going on in the world? And are we part of a simulation, or is there some other explanation? I'll share the stories. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Story 1. This happened to me several years ago while I was living in California and working a great job in a downtown coffee house. I loved everything about that job. I worked with fantastic people, and our shop was located in the city's historic district in a very old, very beautiful building that had once been a hotel in the 1800s, but had since been converted into apartments, lofts, and of course, the big coffee house on the main floor. Being an early birdie and living only a couple blocks away from the coffee house, I was always scheduled to work the opening shift, which started at 4:15 a.m. It was the most unpopular shift, but it happened to be my absolute favorite one because I loved walking to work in the quiet of the early mornings as the rest of the city was sound asleep. Normally, downtown was quite loud and busy, full of people and constant activity. But in the early hours of the morning, it was still and silent, and I felt as if I was the only person in existence, walking through a ghost town. Every day, I arrived about 10 or 15 minutes early for my shift, and would wait for my manager on the patio outside of the shop. It was always just the two of us working that early shift, and my manager was often running a little bit behind, and never arrived before I did, but I didn't mind at all. I liked to spend some time by myself on the patio outside of the darkened shop, gathering my thoughts while I waited for him to walk up with his keys to unlock the doors. One morning, as I was walking to work and approaching our building, I noticed that the coffee house was brightly lit up, as all the lights were already turned on and shining through the store's giant glass windows. I was about 10 minutes early that morning, so I was surprised to see that my manager had arrived before me and had already started opening up the shop. I walked up to the glass door and pulled on the handle to let myself in, only to find that it was locked shut. That wasn't really unusual, as we often kept the doors of the employee entrance and main entrance locked while we got everything ready for the day and went through our morning procedures until 5 a.m., which was our official opening time. What was unusual, though, was the sound of music I could clearly hear drifting through the speakers inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but we never turned it on until around 9 or so in the morning, out of respect for all the tenants living in the apartments above us. But on this particular morning, I could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. I thought it was odd, but decided that maybe my manager was just feeling extra festive that day and wanted to listen to some tunes while we worked. I knocked on the employee entrance door and waited for my manager to come and let me in. I looked through the glass and watched for him. He didn't come, so I knocked again and waited some more. He still didn't appear, so I knocked again and again. I then walked to the main entrance doors and tried knocking on those, with no luck. I checked my watch and saw that I had 5 minutes until I needed to clock in. I knocked again, much louder this time, and looked inside through the glass door for any signs of my manager. And that's when I heard the muffled sound of voices coming from the back of the store, where the kitchen of our coffee shop was located. At that quiet early hour in the morning, every sound seems to be amplified, and what I could distinctly hear was 2 male voices talking and laughing together. That was very unusual, as I had mentioned before that it was normally just me and my manager who opened up the shop, but I figured someone had probably just needed to pick up an extra shift. I knocked yet again and continued to listen to the sounds coming from the coffee shop. The men kept talking and laughing loudly. They seemed to be having a really great time. In addition to the music and the talking and the laughter, I began to hear the sound of clanging dishes and also the sprayer of the 3-compartment steel kitchen sink being turned on and off, which was very, very unusual, as there would be no dishes to wash before the store had even opened. I was also confused as to why my manager, and whoever was with him, were in the kitchen in the back of the store, because so much of our opening procedures, setting up the pastry case, brewing the coffee, preparing everything for the espresso machine, were done at the front of the store, where I was waiting to be let inside. At this point, I was getting a bit irritated, as I was supposed to start work in just a few minutes and I needed to punch in on our time clock. I hated clocking in late for work. I dug out my phone and dialed my manager's cell phone. He didn't pick up. So I dialed a number to our coffee shop instead, and the 2 phones inside the shop, one in the back office and one up front by the register, started ringing. Once, twice, 3 rings and no answer. Now 4 rings, and 5. I hung up and immediately dialed again, annoyed that they were making such a racket in there with the music and all the talking and the laughter that they probably couldn't even hear the phone at all. Just as before, nobody answered. I hung up and redialed the store for the 3rd time. The phone rang and went unanswered, and so I banged on the door yet again, to no avail. I looked at my watch. I was officially late for work. As I was standing in front of the locked door with my phone against my ear, becoming more and more irritated, I noticed a pair of headlights reflecting in the glass, rolling up behind me. I turned around and saw something I did not expect at all. It was my manager. "I'm so sorry I'm late," he said, as he climbed out of the driver's seat and shut his car door and hustled up to the shop's entrance. "I tried to get here as fast as I could," he said, as he moved toward me and fumbled with his keys trying to find the one to the shop door. "You're mad," he said. "I can tell. I'm really sorry." Completely confused, I put my phone away and turned to head into the store with him. And that's when I lost my breath for a minute. The coffee shop was totally dark. None of the lights were on. Not one single light. And it was dead quiet. The Christmas music had stopped, and so had the voices and laughter. All of the loud noises had disappeared. Every sound I had been listening to just seconds before had suddenly vanished. "I promise I'll be here on time tomorrow," my manager said as he fit his key into the lock. "I'll even be early. You'll be shocked." Little did he know that I could not possibly be more shocked to see him than I was at that very moment, as he opened the door to the silent, completely empty coffee house. Story 2. At around the age of 10, my dad and I were returning home from a trip to my uncle's house. We were away for about 3 days, and when we opened the door, we found that someone had broken into our side door and robbed us of a lot of electronics and valuables. At the time, my mother and her boyfriend didn't live too far away to make things easier with me going back and forth between households every day because of their work schedules. My dad freaked out and lost it while I decided to run over to my mom's place and tell her what happened and to get her to call the police. Now, like I said before, my mother and father, while being divorced, lived very close to each other. It was only about 4.5 blocks away on the same street. A very open and plain street where you should be able to see everyone walking down it during the daytime. And yet somehow in the time it took me to practically sprint those 4.5 blocks, it turned out that my dad had already called my mom, and she had walked down to his house using the exact same path that I took. She beat me there, and then said she had been there for a few minutes already. To this day, I don't understand what happened. I should have seen my mother walking down the sidewalk or on the street regardless of where I was walking because of how open everything was. Not only that, but the fact that I ran and she still beat me by a few minutes makes me think I somehow lost a couple of minutes of my life. Story 3. I have 2. Both were on my motorcycle. Once, I was riding down this dirt back road that connected to towns. No houses. No nothing. Just trees for like 4 or 5 miles. As I'm riding along, I see something small fall straight down, perfectly straight down. This is an important detail. And hit the road in front of me. Curious, I stop and turn around to see what it was. Again, you have to remember, there is nothing on this road. Anyway, I pull up to the mystery object, and it's a packet of sweet and sour nugget sauce from Burger King. The nearest BK was at least 3 miles away, as the crow flies. Not that proximity would help explain why it fell straight out of the sky anyway. It hit the ground hard enough that it had broken open and splattered in the road. I got off my bike and searched hard for any sign of life, and found nothing. Again, even if someone had thrown it, it certainly wouldn't have explained why it distinctly fell straight down. It bothers me to this day. The second one was sometime later. My wife and I, who was my girlfriend at the time, were just out riding around some rural roads, enjoying a beautiful day. We hadn't said anything to each other in a little while, but suddenly out of nowhere, we both began singing the chorus to Travis Tritt's "It's a Great Day to Be Alive" at the exact same time. Neither of us particularly liked the song or have any affiliation to it. It was just a nice day, and we both made the connection to the nice day and the song at the same time and began singing the exact same words at the exact same moment. Very weird. Story 4. I have a few. I'll start in chronological order. When I was 2 years old, my mom and I lived with my grandma and great-grandma. My grandma was very involved in her church, and on this particular day, a friend came to pick her up so they could go do some ministry. I was watching out the window as she left to get in his car, and as she walked up to greet him, I saw a skeleton in medieval armor, helmet, shield, and sword, and it came from behind the car with the sword raised to attack them. As it swung the sword down to strike them, there was a shield of light that radiated around them, and as the sword hit the light, the skeleton crumbled. This sounds like the wild imaginations of a child, but I was 2 years old, and I had not seen any kind of cartoons or other media with these kinds of imagery. At the time, my grandma and her friend were doing spiritual warfare, casting out evil spirits and such, and this is what they were headed to do on this day. The next one happened when I was 3. My mom and I had moved into our own home at this point. I had my own bedroom there, and one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and there were 3 very tall and dark figures in my room, standing at the foot of my bed. They were asking me to come outside and play with them. They were not acting menacing or scary at all, although their appearance was very dark and scary. They were being very friendly, as I imagine a child predator or kidnapper would act. I told them that I could not go outside without my mom, and that it was nighttime as well. They insisted that I go out to play, and they even told me that my mom told them it was okay. I immediately became terrified, screamed as loud as I could, and then ran into my mom's room. I slept in my mom's bed every night until we moved from that house a few months later. When I got older and talked to my mom about that experience, she told me that she also experienced very dark, creepy stuff at that house. When I was 5, my mom and I came home one night after being at a Bible study at a friend's house. When we came inside, there were some things thrown around the living room floor, and this necklace that my mom had purchased from some New Age place was lying on a table, and it had been cut in half. My mom called the police because she thought someone had broken in, and they came to investigate. All the doors and windows were locked, and there was no sign of forced entry, and no footsteps around the house. Story 5. Okay, I have a few equally weird as fuck Matrix snafus, so buckle in, kids. This is going to be a wild ride. 10-year-old me was angrily throwing rocks into a pond, with no one around, and no possible way for any rock to hit me. I legitimately threw a rock, watched a portal open and eat the rock, and then it hit me in the back of my head, and I know, sure as bear shit in the woods, that it was the exact same fucking rock. 13-year-old me, grilling on the deck at our house with our family and friends having a good time, when suddenly a wind gust knocks over the grill and the coals spill out and the grease sets the deck on fire. Listen, I glitched in the Matrix. I ran through 2 walls, just like the X-Men Kitty Pryde, or the Avengers Vision. I grabbed the fire extinguisher and went back the same way I came in. I promise everyone saw this and wouldn't shut up about it for a week. I have yet to be able to reproduce this glitch, but I did save our house that day. 15-year-old me with my father, we were driving to a friend's house. It was midsummer and hot as the devil's asshole. We had no AC in the car, so the windows were down, and we were hoping for a breeze. We were stopped at a light, and out of fucking nowhere, a saggy power line springs up, smoothly does an imitation of a guitar string, and settled laser line straight. My dad and I both saw it. The trucker next to us saw it as well, and the people on the other side of the intersection looked like they saw it too. This wasn't just a normal spike in current wiggle that overused, unmaintained power lines do on occasion. This was fucking weird. And my most recent is some goddamn SCP level shit. Just last week, I was eating in a mall, and they had the news on the television. I was watching it, and saw it was the mall I was in. I saw the camera pan and saw myself on the screen, eating and watching, for a good few seconds. I moved, and 4-ish seconds later, the screen me moves. I turned my head to wave at the cute reporter and her cameraman, and listen, there was fucking no one there. No camera, no reporter, no crew of any kind whatsoever. I turned back to the TV, and they're still looking in my direction and yakking about the food court. I know how cameras work, and I know if they're using a telephoto lens that distance can be weird. So I shake my head, turn and keep looking, and still, I see no crew, no drone, no anyone in a red dress, nothing. But I swear I was on TV. Story 6. I have a good one. I was about 12 years old and woke up in the middle of the night needing to take a leak. I walked across the hall to the little bathroom, hit the lights, and was about to reach for the toilet when I glanced up and saw a face in the mirror. It was not my face. It was as if someone was on the other side, standing to the right, with their face right next to the glass, just staring at me. I only saw it for the briefest moment, but it was seared into my brain. I screamed and ran out of there to find my dad. Of course, he investigated, then calmed me down, or at least tried to. Eventually, we had a prayer session because I was so freaked out. And eventually, I must have gone back to sleep. Fast forward to my 30s, I'd forgotten all about the event. One night while visiting my dad, he quietly brings it up. Remember that one time you saw a face in the mirror? It suddenly came back to me in a rush of memory, sending a chill down my spine. Yeah, I remember. Well, he said, I sometimes think about that night. He looked down at the floor with a serious expression. I saw it too. He went on to describe exactly what I'd seen. We have no idea what that was. Apparently, when he investigated, he saw it and had a freakout of his own. And apparently the prayer session was as much for his own nerves as mine. I respect him for keeping that tidbit from me till my 30s, but I kinda wish he'd never told me. Story 7. I was living for 3 summers in a big old house that served as the rectory, a church house, for a church where I was working. The minister was in and out all summer, and I was also there to house sit while he was on vacation. At the time, I was really into sleep tracking apps, and especially sleep noise recording apps to see if I could hear myself talking in my sleep. I ran it almost every night and never heard a single interesting thing. I barely snore, so I would hear the odd siren outside, the bed creaking as I rolled over, breathing, a fart, etc. One morning when I was alone in the house, the minister was on vacation. I opened the app to play back noises from the night before. All the usual stuff until the second to last recording. The recording was from around 3:30 or 4 in the morning. You can clearly hear me breathing, and that I am not rolling around or moving much. If I had rolled or gotten up, the app would have recorded it as it was an old and creaky bed. Suddenly, as you hear me breathing, there comes the noise of 3 very distinct and unmistakable raps of knuckles on wood, followed by a 2-second pause, and the snapping of fingers. Tap, 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 snap. It was super unnerving, especially because there was no evidence that it was me doing it. It bothered me enough that I set the phone back down on the nightstand and tried to recreate the noise from anywhere that I could reach while laying on the bed. The frame, the bedside table, the nearby bookcase, but I could never get it exactly, or figure out what wood was being tapped on. Whatever the case, the noise was distant enough that it could not have come from anywhere that I could have reached while lying in the bed. I have never been prone to sleepwalking, talking, or even getting up in the night to go to the bathroom, so I am quite certain it wasn't me. This is something that has stuck with me and for which I have no answer. And here's our final story. When I was young, I specifically remember waking up to go to the bathroom. When I looked out my bedroom window, which my bed was pushed up against, I saw a dark silhouette peeking out from behind a tree, looking into my bedroom. I got freaked out and kept blinking to make it go away, but it remained there, staring. I thought I saw it fly upwards and disintegrate, almost as if it turned into a cloud of smoke. To be clear, this didn't look like a human because it had more of a fluid silhouette that was smoothed out. Think the Burns alien from The Simpsons. I made my way downstairs to my parents' bedroom to wake them up, but I stopped at a window on the stairs to look out and see if the silhouette was still there. It was, but it had moved behind a bunch of bushes, somewhere off to the side. I kept blinking and rubbing my eyes, and yet again, the silhouette disappeared up into a waft of smoke. I ran as fast as I could to my parents' room and woke them up. The scary thing is that when my parents woke up the next morning, they found our rabbits had been attacked outside and were left in a bloody mess in their cage, which was a large penned-in area outside. My dad also found handprints on my window from the outside that implied that someone had been pushing upwards on the window to try to open it. We found out later on that my brother had gotten into some trouble and it was someone coming to break into his room. They had mistaken my window for his bedroom, and when they couldn't get in, my window was locked. They got mad and killed our rabbits. I still remember it vividly to this day. The weird thing is that I never woke up like you do after a nightmare, but the silhouettes I saw were not human. The whole ordeal made me panicked for weeks. My parents had to check my room nightly for weeks before I was able to sleep. I'll admit, I'm not sure what I think about glitch in the Matrix stories, but that doesn't mean they don't scare the hell out of me, because they toe the line between fact and fiction, reality and fantasy, and leave you wondering what the hell is going on. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with these lingering questions. Are we part of a simulation, similar to the Matrix? Or is there something else going on? I've shared the stories. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.